Hey everyone, it's Sarah, and I'm back to film my reading journal for the month of February. So diving straight in, the favorite book of the month was The God of the Woods. I read 10 books in total, 2,021 pages, and I had an average rating of 3.75. As you can see from all the pink, I read a lot of romance this month, which is fitting for February. Here is my monthly overview of when I started and finished different books. And then my, kind of goals page, I pulled a quote from The Wedding People. There is no such thing as a happy place, because when you are happy, everywhere is a happy place. And when you are sad, everywhere is a sad place. I had a good mix of Kindle book and audiobook. I read a lot of short stories on my, Kindle app on my phone. And so, yeah, that ended up making things more even than in some months. I did pretty well on my goals. The only goal that I didn't, 100% hit was tracking my pages on Storygraph, trying to track each day where I'm at in a book. So then at the end of the month, the Storygraph, charts that it makes up are more accurate, because otherwise if you don't track your progress each day, it'll just mark that you read, a 400-page book on the final day when you finish the book versus, spacing it out obviously throughout the week or so that you read it. So I'm still working on that. It's just a hard habit to get into, or there's some days I forget. So I did it a lot of the time, but not all of the time, which is why it wasn't 100%. I read 10 books. I had a few other books that I was in the middle of or that I started. But yes, and I have one book that I'm pretty sure I'm DNFing, which was one of my top priority books. I read The Wedding People, The God of the Woods, and I started What the Nanny Saw. And What the Nanny Saw was a book that was on my TBR. I was going to use it for one of the Buzzword Reading Challenge prompts for a silhouette on the cover, because it has a silhouette on the cover. And I started reading it and I really didn't make it very far, and it didn't suck me in, and I've just had no desire to pick it back up. And I'm not great at DNFing books, so it's hard for me to say that I don't want to read it, but I've already since then found and read a different book to meet this prompt that I finished at the beginning of March. So I really don't have a reason to continue it if I'm not really wanting to. And like I said, I didn't make it very far in it anyways. So that one's probably going to just be a DNF. For my February book of the month, I ordered One and Only. I didn't read it this month, but I did read my January book of the month. So I feel like I'm still making progress on trying to read my book of the months in a timely fashion. And then I was going to read a book for the Literally Dead book club, which is just an online book club, but I didn't pre-order the book, and then my local bookshop didn't have it. And then by the time I actually got the book, it was near the end of the month and we were going on vacation, and I just never picked it up. But I would like to read it, soon. I bought the book, and then I could always just go back and watch the book club discussion that they record. So that was all of my, kind of February overview. Looking at the different formats that I was reading my books in. Like I said, a lot of Kindle and audiobooks, but I did have a physical book mixed in there as well. Then I have, 3 more books that I read in comparison to January. However, 6 of them were short stories, so, even though it was more books, it was less pages, which makes sense. Then I'm just continuing filling out my books on this bookshelf. This is from JoJo's Pretty Paper Shop. And I have my Plan with Elise tracker. I'm at 17 books total for the year so far, which is great progress. So then getting into what I read this month, the first thing I read was Accidentally Yours, which was one of the Amazon short story, kind of Valentine's Day collection that they released this year. All of them, I think they were all called the Improbable Meet Cute series. So, kind of like reconnecting with a past love, or, kind of unexpectedly meeting a guy. And so they all had some sort of kind of surprise element to it, or reconnection. So for Accidentally Yours, this one was probably my favorite out of the 6. This one, you have our female main character that is out of work. She just lost a job, that she was with a really techy, bro company that didn't appreciate her, didn't pay her well. She stuck with it longer than she should have. Then they fire her, and now she needs a new job. And she's waiting, or trying to get into this Zoom interview that she has scheduled, and somehow ends up on the wrong Zoom call and ends up with like a company's Zoom meeting where they're, discussing company projections, marketing plan, etc. And it seems similar to the company that she's just left, and she's still kind of butthurt by losing this job, or sticking with this job, and the type of people that she worked with. And so she kind of gives them some negative critical feedback on their presentation, on their marketing points, because that's her career, that's what she does. And logs off the Zoom call, and she feels good about just actually telling someone what she thinks, and kind of expressing her opinion. And unbeknownst to her, or unknowingly, that leads to a job opportunity with this company that she just was very critical of, because they do need a new marketing person, and she had made some valid points. And then obviously that's going to lead to her developing a romance for someone at the company as well. So I gave it 5 stars. I just enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun, fast read. Then we have The Wedding People. This one has been on my radar to read for a little while, so I finally got around to reading it. Also, too, it took a while for my hold to come up at the library, which is part of the reason why it took a while to get to, because I own the book, but a lot of times I like to read the audiobook because that's just easier for me at this point in my life. And so in The Wedding People, you have Phoebe, who is planning to kill herself. She has had a rough, couple of years. She's divorced. Her job's not in a great place. Things just are kind of not going her way. She's just done. And so she has this grand idea that she's gonna, end her life at this beautiful hotel that she wanted to stay at, that she wanted to go on vacation there sometime. And, she's essentially going to kind of treat herself and then, end things. Well, this hotel is hosting a wedding the same weekend, and everyone at the hotel was supposed to be wedding guests only. They were supposed to have booked it all, because this is pretty close to COVID times, and so there's still some restrictions, or restrictions are starting to lighten. And so the bride has booked the hotel totally for her guests, or so she intended, but Phoebe's the only one at this hotel at this wedding wasn't really invited. And people obviously mistake her for a wedding guest. They just assume she's part of a different side of the family, or they just don't know who she is because of COVID. They haven't been around a lot of these people recently, and so everyone assumes she's connected to the wedding in some way. They just don't know how. And until she meets the bride, and the bride obviously realizes that she's not a part of her family, not a part of her wedding. And when Phoebe tells her what she's going to do, the bride insists that she cannot kill herself that weekend, because that's going to ruin her wedding, and she's been planning this wedding for however long. And basically, like, no, I won't allow you to kill yourself. And so the story just progresses from there. You end up Phoebe gets more involved with this wedding than she anticipated or even realized that she would. And I just found the characters really fresh and the story fresh and something I hadn't really read before or can't really compare it to anything I've read. So I found that just really fun, and I liked the characters. I thought that they were written in a very likable way, and even the characters or things that you maybe didn't like, the character was still written well. And yeah, I don't know. I just had a good time reading this. I wanted to see what was going to happen next, and I enjoyed the ride. Next up, I have Time Will Tell. This is another one of those short story romances. Our female main character finds, or when her grandmother passes away, she leaves a note or, kind of a message to our female main character about this time capsule that she has left behind. And she had this romance with another woman back in the 1950s, and they couldn't be together because of the time frame, because of the social setting. And they locked away some of their memories, some of their things in this time capsule, and now she's ready for our female main character to open it up, share it with the family. And the time capsule is locked. It requires a key, and the family of the other woman are the ones in possession of the key. So essentially you're bringing these two families together to figure out, the secrets of their grandmothers, or their matriarchs. And, it was cute. I think that I enjoyed the story more as it went on. It didn't start off my favorite, just the way it was written or the character portrayals at the beginning, but I do think that I enjoyed it more at the end than I did at the beginning. So I gave it like 3.5 stars. Then the next one I read was Second Act Romance, another short story. And this one, you have a play that half of the cast, or a majority of the cast, has gotten sick from food poisoning. Our female main character didn't go to the restaurant that they all went to, so she's not sick, but they're trying to figure out replacements for the cast because they have a sold out Valentine's Day performance and they don't want to have to cancel and, try to refund all these people their tickets. So they end up pulling an actor who has performed the role previously that our female main character has met before, and the story kind of goes from there. I will say that for a romance, this had far too many descriptions of food poisoning. I don't, when I'm reading a romance, need to hear about people vomiting multiple times, or having other issues multiple times. I think that just kind of took away from the romance. And then the show that they're putting on is Oklahoma, and I'm a person that really enjoys theater. I've just never seen Oklahoma. It's not a very, nowadays a very popular play, and so I've just never gotten around to seeing it. I've never seen a live performance of it. I've never gone back and watched the movie version of it, and so I don't really know that much about it. They get into the weeds about Oklahoma and different scenes, different ways they're getting it set up, blocking, things like that. That also kind of detracted from the story. And again, as someone that enjoys the theater, that goes to the theater regularly, and I don't even know that much about Oklahoma. I don't really care that much about Oklahoma. I feel like also the general reader that also doesn't know anything about Oklahoma, or doesn't, care as much about the theater, it got a little into the weeds with some of the technical details and, details specifically about this show. So I think, maybe if it was a different, more universally liked or known show, even like Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, that kind of thing, you could have maybe had a better connection there. Or just don't give as many details about the play because, that really isn't why people are reading the book. But I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. There were just a couple of things that I felt detracted from it. Next, we have The Night Shift, and this one I really enjoyed. This was a thriller, and, in 1999, the employees at a Blockbuster are attacked, and killed. There was one survivor, and now, 15 years later, another killing has happened in this, small town at an ice cream shop at closing. And again, you have one survivor. And so you have different perspectives from various people in the story. You have the survivor from the original attack who is trying to help out the survivor from this, present day attack. You have an investigator. You have, I'm trying to think of who else we have. There's a few different perspectives. So you have, different perspectives on what's going on. And you're trying to figure out if it's the same killer, if it's just a coincidence that these very similar murders happened in the same place, and, trying to figure out what is going on. But I gave it 4 stars. My husband and I read it in one weekend as we were on a road trip, and really enjoyed it. Next, I have A Play for Love. This is another romance. This one also has like an acting class or theater involvement. This was my least favorite out of all of them. I gave it 2 stars. I mean, I could have rated it lower too, but you have our female main character who's in an acting class, doesn't really care about acting, but I don't know, just went along with her friend to take this college level acting class. And the project for the class that they're currently doing is, getting randomly assigned with another person in the class, a female-male pairing, to act out a scene from Shakespeare. And our female main character is very superficial, very judgmental, and basically picks apart every guy in the class and doesn't want to be a partner with any of them. And, God forbid she gets the Romeo and Juliet scene, and then they're gonna have to kiss, and lo and behold, someone walks in late. It's the hottest guy in the class, and of course they get paired up, and of course they get Romeo and Juliet. And then now, however many years later, they end up reconnecting again in New York City, and she's leaving in the morning. Her flight leaves at 5 a.m. and they decide to go on this like epic date where they're going to do all the things that she's never done in New York City before she leaves. And like I said, I just didn't like the characters. I really didn't like her female main character, and even the male main character, I was very one-dimensional. And then this epic date in New York City, I mean, that could have been pretty interesting, but I just thought it was really unrealistic. If you're moving the next day, if you're leaving at 5 a.m., are you really staying out all night, spending your last day with some essentially stranger that you saw once upon a time in college? I don't know. It just is very unrealistic to me. And even the timing, that you could fit that much into one afternoon in New York City was, again, just a little unrealistic, unbelievable. So I just didn't enjoy it. Moving on to my favorite book of the month, I read The God of the Woods. This one is a mystery, and it takes place, or most of the book takes place, in the 70s. You have this summer camp that's owned by this very rich family. I think they're into like banking, and they own this large bit of land and this summer camp. And now, present day in the 70s, you have a camper who's disappeared, and it's this family's daughter, which is bad enough on its own. But you also have this family, struck by tragedy or by a similar disappearance 14 years ago from their son disappearing. And so, you're trying to figure out what happened to the daughter, what happened to the son. You're trying to uncover or figure out all of these secrets people are hiding, because everyone has some sort of a secret that they're hiding. Again, this one has multiple perspectives. So you have, one of the camp counselors, you have the mother, you have you know, a friend of one of the campers. You know, have multiple people involved, and I felt like this book, I kept wanting to know more, because, you know, you'd finish character A's chapter and then you move on to character B's chapter, and, you know, I was just excited to get back to character B as I was to eventually get back to character A. You know, it was just one of those stories where you just kept wanting to know what happened, and I felt like it was written very well, to where I was always, I don't know, excited to get to the next perspective. And yeah, I don't know, I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It made me really nostalgic for like a summer camp type experience. I never went to like a woody summer camp, but reading books like this, or you know, watching The Parent Trap, things like that, it makes me really want to have that experience, or I think that would have just been so fun. And so again, it just made me really want to live in the world, or, you know, be there, and I felt like I could have been there at times. So 5 stars, enjoyed it. Next, I have Death to Valentine's Day. This one was a 2.5 star for me. It started off stronger. I thought I was going to rate it more highly. And then there's something that books do sometimes that I just hate. And this book did that. And I don't want to spoil it, because then it spoils, you know, the ending. But that like immediately knocked it down quite significantly. But you have this Valentine's Day party. It's hosted at this, you know, mountain chalet by this very rich person. And I mean, I'm a little foggy on how these characters even know this person and how they got invited to this party. So you just kind of have to ignore that a little bit. But regardless, they're at this party, and our female main character has been single for a year. She broke up with her kind of long-term boyfriend who cheated on her, and she's a little hung up on Valentine's Day because he broke up with her on Valentine's Day last year. And at this party, she ends up reconnecting with his brother, who has always had a thing for her. And so also at this party, someone dies, and of course they're snowed in, so then, you know, the killer is among them. So now they're also trying to figure out who the killer is at this party, in addition to this budding romance, in addition to, you know, this party. So I gave it 2.5 stars. Like I said, there was like the ending made me mad. It annoys me. So overall, I enjoyed it, you know, the first half more than the latter half. Next, I have Most Eligible. This one was my book of the month pick for January, and you follow a bachelor type show, like reality show, where you have a man who is looking for, you know, his future wife, and we have a journalist. Our female main character has gone undercover because she's heard negative whisperings about the show, about how things are put on, that the producer of the show, you know, maybe forces certain situations, or maybe is not very kind to the contestants. And so she's trying to go undercover on the show, make it as far as she can, to dig up as much dirt as she can, to write an expose and, you know, launch her journalism career further. The host of the show changes every year, as well as the, you know, main guy looking for love. And the host of the show ends up being someone that she had a one-night stand with, that she thought that things were really great between them, but he left in the morning before she woke up. And so she, you know, she's a little hung up on him too, because she thought they had this great connection, this great thing. So then that also adds to some of the drama, because she needs to make it far on the show with you know, the main bachelor, and so she can't be distracted by this host that, you know, she still has feelings for. So I gave it 3.5 stars. It was a little predictable. And then with this type of book too, you need a lot of characters because it's a competition show. You're obviously eliminating a lot of people. And so it was hard to connect with some of the side characters just because I felt like a lot of the side characters just blended into one another. And, you know, it's hard to do that, I guess, in one of these types of books anyways, because, you know, you're eliminating people pretty quickly to get to, you know, the end of the story. But it was hard to follow, and there were some characters even at the end that I still had trouble placing exactly who they were, despite them being throughout the entire book. So 3.5 stars. And then finally for this month, I had Valentine's Sleigh. This was the final book in that Amazon Improbable Meet Cute kind of Valentine's Day short story release. This one I gave 4 stars. This one was definitely a darker romance, or just had darker elements in it. You have a grave digger who today on Valentine's Day, he buried his high school crush. You know, she had married someone else and had this, you know, pretty successful life, and she died, and he's upset about it, that, you know, she had such a short life, and, you know, kind of the possibility of being together, you know, they never had that chance or whatever. Well, then he's clearing up things in the graveyard at night, and then he hears a noise. Well, it turns out she's not dead, and she's been buried alive, you know, and so she wakes up in her coffin, and he has to dig her out. And then they're trying to figure out what happened to her, because obviously she was not dead, and the most likely scenario is that her husband has just tried to kill her. And so then they're trying to, you know, gather evidence, figure out what happened. And she doesn't want to go to the cops because he's a successful doctor in town, and his brother is the sheriff, and it's a pretty small town. So yeah, and then, you know, they obviously start to have feelings for one another as well. So I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed it. And that was everything I read this month. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I apologize for this video going up so late. We were on vacation at the beginning of the month, and then life has just been busy. So better late than never getting this up. But I will be back soon to share whatever I read in March. Bye.